And I got to tell you, I'm sick and tired of the scaredy crowd. I mean, you're going to lose your country if you don't rise up and start pushing back on this stuff.
Wow, folks. Donald J. Trump supporters, President Donald J. Trump supporters, you are now domestic extremists and terrorists, according to the FBI and a Newsweek report. That's a pretty scary thought. I mean, I guess you and I are going to have people bake cakes for us if it's true that they will be shaking down anybody they suspect of being outside of whatever narrative they and whatever box they have put together. We're going to be talking to a senior official from President Trump's cabinet, former President Trump's cabinet on this show about that. He's former State Department spokesperson as well to the United Nations. He was acting director of national intelligence and the ambassador to Germany and special envoy to Kosovo and Serbia. Who do you think that is? Somebody who owns all of those titles, and I hope will collect more titles in 2024-25. I hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed. We're also going to be talking to this very special guest about the NGOs. Yeah, I haven't said the name yet. I'm sure you're all just like, wait, who is that? Who is that person? Non-governmental organizations operating at the border and the United Nations taking billions, hundreds of billions of your tax dollars over the years to fund some of these non-governmental organizations that are pushing for no borders, that are pushing to eliminate the sovereignty of nations, and who are pushing for migration. Where are they getting this money? Guess what? It's mainly your taxpayer dollars. And why are they facilitating this crisis? I think we're going to need to ask this person. Who is this person? None other than my good friend and former ambassador to Germany as well, Ambassador Ric Grenell. I'm going to ask him these questions and more on today's show. But first, I need to thank HumanN Super Beets. Guys, I love Super Beets. I love the way they taste. I take 2 every single day for my heart health. And I do that because my family, like many of your families, have had heart disease. And I don't want that in my life. I want to take care of my health, and I want to do everything I can to help prevent that. And I do that by taking care of myself and taking Super Beets. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than healthy lifestyle alone. With my busy schedule, Super Beets Chews are a quick and convenient way to do something good for my heart. They taste great and give me the peace of mind about my health and overall wellness. Supporting healthy blood pressure comes with a bonus, folks. Super Beets Heart Chews support healthy circulation, so you not only get good blood pressure support, you also get productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free, listen to this, 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sara, S-A-R-A. That's getsuperbeets.com, code Sara. I'm so happy to have you on the show. I'm going to say Ambassador Grenell, or former acting director of national intelligence, as well as former State Department spokesperson to the United Nations, ambassador to Germany. Is there not a title that you do not own that you want to own? I think I know one.
What is that?
I think State Department, Secretary of State.
You know, I would say the title that I'm looking for right now, and it's a big debate of whether or not I'm going to be a 2-dog owner or just a 1-dog owner. That's like the big thing on my mind right now.
Okay, I am a 4-dog owner right now, and I'm regretting the 4th, but I couldn't help myself. I fell in love with this little yellow lab, and I forgot how hard it is to train a puppy. That's a very big puppy. So I think you can do it. 2 dogs, totally manageable.
But you remember, it's a big jump, right? From 1 dog to 2. And I think it's a slippery slope from 2 to 3. It's pretty easy. But from 1 to 2, it's just like, you know.
It's a jump.
Yeah,
what kind of dog is it? What kind of dog?
She's a Texas Blue Lacy. It's the state dog of Texas.
I love them.
And
I love them.
I have no relation to Texas whatsoever. I mean, my brother lives there, but it's just one of those things that the dog is adorable and she's perfect and she's 13. And I feel like maybe I've passed the point of allowing another, she's such a queen and I love taking care of every little thing about her, and introducing another one is like a big deal. But I love dogs, so I don't know what to do.
I don't know. I think it's okay. And it's good for a dog to have another dog with them. And since she's trained, she is 13. I know I'm trying to talk you into this. I don't know. Is your husband on your side with this? Does he want the dog or not want the dog? I don't want to start a fight. But 2 dogs are totally manageable, and especially if the second dog is potty trained. And I love Texas Blue Lacy's. I have a friend here in Texas on the border who has a ranch, the Harris Ranch. He manages it. He has 2 Texas Blue Lacy's that are incredible. And Rick, when you see them jump,
I know,
and they are amazing jumpers. I mean, they're
amazing
beautiful.
Jumpers. Our Lola was just like, she could skyrocket at the Frisbee on the beach. It was amazing.
Yeah. See, so I'm with you on that all the way. And I've got to talk to you though about some of the biggest issues I think we're facing in our country. We have an election coming 2024. And I'm going to just open it up with this. I was going to open it up with the UN and the border, but I think the biggest news right now that we need to focus on, at least right up at the top, is this Newsweek article that I was astonished at, this article that targeted all members, basically, and all followers of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, saying that the FBI has basically targeted me, anybody else who believes in America first, as a domestic extremist or terrorist, as it said in the article. They're utilizing the tools that the FBI was given, even under the Patriot Act, to target domestic extremists. And that being Donald J. Trump supporters, followers, and people that they seem concerned about. Does that blow your mind?
Yeah, but I'm not that surprised, Sarah. That's the problem is that you look at how Biden targeted conservatives at the IRS, and now we see what's happening in DOJ and the FBI, and we certainly know debanking is a problem. You really do have the left who have climbed up on this moral high horse to convince themselves that going after conservatives with the full weaponry of the U.S. government is a good thing. They're spinning this as they're helping democracy by bludgeoning the conservative movement and conservatives. They silenced us on big tech. They literally manipulated the last presidential election by telling us 3 weeks before the election, don't you dare look at Hunter's laptop filled with all of that information about the Biden family with the communist Chinese connections. Don't look at that because it's Russian disinformation. And
they knew it was a lie. Let's just clarify this for all of our listeners. They knew it was a lie.
Not one of those 51 people who signed that letter, former intelligence officials, not a single one saw a single piece of raw intel or had a briefing suggesting that it was Russian disinformation. That was not true. They knew that. They did it for politics 3 weeks before an election. And, we hear a lot about, politicizing the intelligence community, but there are no consequences for these people. Adam Schiff is now running for the Senate and pretending like he's the arbiter of truth when the guy spent 3 years lying to the American people. He said one thing under oath and he said another thing on CNN. And I'm just wondering, at what point do we get the consequences? Because the reason why it's getting worse, the reason why we're seeing now this story about FBI being able to feel confident about going after conservatives is because there's no pushback. There hasn't been any.
There's no DOJ.
Yeah, but even from the media.
Ambassador, there's no consequences here, Ambassador. Look, we've seen, and this is what terrifies me, We have a Department of Justice that appears to be owned and weaponized against a political party. We have an FBI that is owned and weaponized against a political party. We are grateful for those whistleblowers that have come forward to Congress, the people that are willing to tell the truth, but they're few and far between because everyone is terrified. And what scares me is the fact that, and I'm going to ask you this, I mean, it appears to be election interference on the part of the FBI. You and I both know how government works. This story was written because they wanted to give it to Newsweek. They wanted to send a message to Americans across the board that if you are a big supporter of Donald Trump, that if you come out and you speak out against the narrative that the government is issuing, which is that Donald Trump is somehow anti-American, it's anti-American to support him, then you will be targeted by the FBI. That to me is election interference. Newsweek delivered that message. It's disinformation. And I want to ask you this, which is even more important. How do we trust our agencies to protect the more than likely person that is going to win the primary on the part of the Republican Party, which is Donald J. Trump? More than likely. I mean, it could be something else happens. Granted, I don't have a crystal ball. But how can we trust them when they're targeting him?
Look, we've got a big problem because DOJ and the CIA and the FBI and all of the intelligence agencies that I ran all have a credibility problem. And I used to tell them, when I would gather them together, I told the Israeli group inside the intelligence community that when you go out and you tell all the policymakers that moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is going to cause World War III, and then the opposite happens where we literally break out into world peace agreements, you don't have credibility. And the same with the Russia team. The Russia team inside the intelligence agencies was very, very emotional, political, dramatic. And remember that, Sarah, I think this is really important for the audience to know is that we get pieces of raw intelligence in the intel community. And then there are people that look at that raw intelligence, little factoids, and they write opinion pieces. And this, type of opinion piece is called an assessment. They assess what they believe is going to happen, or they try to put the pieces together. They assess it by looking at the little pieces of raw intelligence. What I would argue is that the writers of intelligence assessments are highly political. It would be like reading the opinion pages of the New York Times. And remember, all of these assessments, they have no names on them.
Absolutely.
We don't know who these people are that are writing these assessments. These opinion pieces is really what they are about raw intelligence. We don't know who they are. And imagine if you were reading the New York Times opinion page or the Los Angeles Times or any of your local newspaper opinion pages, and there were no names on the editorials and you had no idea who was actually saying these things, whether it was like a crazy person or an expert. You mean like a crazy person like Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vidman?
That was, I don't know. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So,
Ambassador.
So what I am troubled by is the credibility. And this was your question about what do we do about these intelligence agencies or others who are coming after us. And I believe that there's a crisis of credibility in government agencies because they brought it on themselves. They have weaponized government. And remember, and I know this from the State Department where I served for 12 years, and I think this is the same thing that we're seeing with the FBI right now, is the rank and file feel like the only way to be promoted, the only way to get the next job is to abide by the criteria that these leaders in these agencies have created. And they've created some crazy criteria of, diversity, equity, inclusion talk. And so all of these people who talk this crazy way, who are bureaucrats, have kind of bought into the idea that that's how they get promoted. And I would think that when the FBI leadership says that Republicans are terrorists, go find them. That the people who want to be promoted and want to be aggressive about their careers are going to go out and please their bosses by finding some sort of, true Republican and then labeling them as, a terrorist.
I'm going to tell you, it is a dangerous, dangerous time, because it isn't just about the bureaucracy making a statement. It's about the actions that the FBI has actually taken and others. And, I love law enforcement, Rick. I see all the work that they do, putting their lives on the lines. Even our intelligence officers who have been overseas and lost their lives fighting for our nation, wounded. You've seen it yourself. But when the system is owned, it really can, and it really has, in many people's opinions, turned into a banana republic. And there's a lot of Americans out there that are scared to death about what should I say? Should I speak up? Should I do this? Should I do that? If I say something, am I going to be targeted like others have been targeted? Or they can utilize the weapon of great choice right now, which is the courts, right? Take you to court, drag you through court. And we've seen that. So I think people are very worried about the future of this country. Allegiance Gold. I love Allegiance Gold. I tell you all the time, diversify, diversify, diversify. And especially in these tumultuous times economically, look at what's going on in the stock market. Right now, you'll get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you visit protectwithsarah.com today. That is protectwithsarah.com today. Gold has stood the test of time as a safe haven for investment. And now more than ever, folks, you need that safety and insurance for what you've worked so hard for. Get up to $5,000 in free silver on a qualifying purchase when you visit protectwithsarah.com today, or give them a call at 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARAH, S-A-R-A. Don't wait. Take control of your retirement today. Call 877-702-7272 and speak with one of their experts. They'll answer all your questions and help you get started on the path to a more secure and prosperous retirement. Time is of the essence. Protect your future with Allegiance Gold. Visit protectwithsarah.com or call 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARAH, S-A-R-A. What do you know about like the UN and the billions of dollars that they pour into the NGOs for relief efforts and migration efforts? I think there's a lot of people concerned about that, especially the Office of Migration.
Yeah, look, I spent 8 years at the UN. I know this crowd very well. I could talk all day about the contributions that the United States puts forward, whether they're assessed contributions, which we have to pay as a member, or voluntary contributions like what we give to UNHCR, World Food Program, UNICEF, or the extra spending that we have to do for peacekeeping, because all of those are different buckets that we spend money on. But one of the things that is very, very clear if you spend a little bit of time at the UN is that this altruistic UN crowd believes that every country is equal, not that every person is equal. They believe that every country, so the United States gets one vote, and so does El Salvador. They believe in this system, and therefore the belief on borders is very shaky. They believe that migrants should be able to just roam and move to wherever they want to go, and that they have this right to pick up and leave and move to another country. And so the UN is very much an enemy of borders. That's just a fact. And what I believe is that countries are not equal. I think people are absolutely equal, but countries are not. And let me give you an example. As someone who spent 12 years at the State Department and ran a big embassy in Europe, I can tell you that there are millions of people who want to get into the United States applying for visas. And we have a problem with people overstaying their visas. So we have to have rules in order to make sure that we don't just have 100 million people coming to the United States and it having chaos. Now, I think that one of the terrible problems was when the Democratic Party decided to give all of this global, no borders idea a nice name. And they called it sanctuary cities. And what we should have done immediately is said, that's not a sanctuary city. That's a city where you get to ignore federal law without consequences. And that's a lawless,
how would they fix that?
That's a lawless society.
Right. How would they have been able to intercede in that case? Because we see what's happened in New York City. We're seeing what's happening in California, in Los Angeles, and other places like even in San Diego, where they're not. I don't believe San Diego is a sanctuary city, but it's faced with the federal government.
Yeah, the very first time, and I don't know what the first city was that stood up and said, we're going to be a sanctuary city, that little nice name. Who wouldn't want to go to a city that's a sanctuary? It sounds like a nice place to watch birds.
It does.
But the reality is that the first time somebody said that, the Republicans should have immediately said, no, law and order. We're not going to have a city where you get to break laws without consequences. What else can you do? And what we're finding in California, what else you can do? You can start by going into any business and grabbing any amount of goods that you want, as long as it's under $1,000. And so what's, with inflation, what's it going to be next year? $1,200. And then in a couple of years, it's going to be, $5,000. Try boarding a plane and say, there's some extra seats. I'm just going to grab this extra seat. There's a zillion other examples of people being able to do whatever they want and causing chaos. So
we saw it in one quick interruption here. We saw it in Washington, D.C. recently. A CVS pharmacy completely emptied. The robbery coincided with the delivery trucks.
That's called Tuesday in California, though, Sarah. I mean, we've been out of control in so many parts of this state. And we've got to start being more aggressive as Republicans, because the reality is the American people are the most generous people in the world. When there is a crisis, it's America that comes and pays for the peacekeeping operation. When there is a food crisis, it is the Americans, not only through the World Food Program that we give the majority of money to, but our bilateral assistance, our foreign aid. And on top of that, we have a system where Americans write checks individually when they are compelled to help.
Right.
Europe doesn't have that system. When you feel, emotional about somebody starving to death in Africa and you live in Europe, you know what you do? So you tell your government you need to spend a little more money. You don't write a personal check. They don't have that system. They don't think of that. We do in America. Not only is our government the most generous through our tax dollars, but then on top of that, we are giving extra money. That is the system. So I say to Americans, you are very generous people. Don't ever let the Democrats tell you that you're stingy or mean-spirited for wanting to close the border, because we have rules. We have a line. You have to wait in line. You have to wait in line when you're at a sporting event and the bathroom line is long.
Right.
You don't just jump in front. Imagine jumping in front at the women's bathroom line, and when someone says, hey, get to the back of the line, you turn around and say racist.
Well, that's what we've come to.
That's what they're doing right now. And I'll finish with this because, the Democrats have this whole labeling of people as racist, sexist, homophobe, or the new one, a Russian agent. And it's all for having a different opinion. When I was growing up, my dad was big on listening to someone else. Listen and you might learn. He used to always say that. Sit down and listen and you might learn something. And so I want to get back to the day where we have trained our high school students and college students to sit and listen, not run out of the room with your fingers in your ears because you can't listen to Candace Owens. You don't have to agree with someone that you're listening to, but you also need to be able to not cancel them simply because you don't agree with them. And that mentality of young people has grown into the government, and our government now is trying to silence dissent. It's dissenting information that they're going after, not disinformation.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And not only is that happening, but we see a trampling of our Constitution. You know, our nation is founded on basic principles, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment. I'm going to talk about unreasonable search and seizure. And we've seen what has happened when you censor and when you ostracize. And this used to be the role of the Democrats, Ambassador. It used to be that the Frank Churches and the Democrats and the Robert Kennedys and, you know, the John F. Kennedys, you know, to some extent would be the ones that would stand up and be like, whoa, wait a minute. We shouldn't be expanding our powers to spy on the American people. And you're absolutely right that Americans are the most generous, amazing people on planet Earth, in my opinion, as well. And we're a melting pot. But you're absolutely right when you say that, you know, we can't just throw, and the left does this, calls everybody who is opposed to this migration, which is complete chaos, a racist. I'm worried about the humanitarian issues as well. And not only that, our national security, but all the children that are being taken into the sex industry that are being sold on the black market, the issues of organ harvesting, the human trafficking, the drug cartels. Why is our government working alongside some of the most nefarious organizations on planet Earth instead of fixing this problem so that we have a legitimately good system for migration that treats all people humanely, and by the way, stops killing our own children with fentanyl?
Well, the reason why that our government is pushing this is twofold. One, the media doesn't push back on them so they can get away with it. And two, people are scared to speak up. And I got to tell you, I'm sick and tired of the scaredy crowd. I mean, you're going to lose your country if you don't rise up and start pushing back on this stuff. And I see people doing it. I see in my little town in LA here, I see independents who are saying, you know, I never voted for a Republican, but I think Washington, D.C. needs a real bull in the China shop, and I'm voting for Trump. And don't tell anybody. I'm starting to see a lot of that. But you know, Ronald Reagan told us, Sarah, that if you're part of a generation that someday, at some point, you are going to have to fight for your freedom. It doesn't matter what generation you're in. Every single generation will have its moment where they have to stand up and fight for their freedom. And you and I are old enough to have lived through 9/11. And
Yes.
how many people did we see in our lives that couldn't just sit here after 9/11 and go to college? They were like, I'm quitting college. I'm going to fight. I don't want that coming here to America. And those incredibly courageous, brave people taught us so much in 2001. I think now this generation, the fight at hand is about what cancel culture has done to our just simple disagreement and debating. And the Democrats have embraced it. You got to push back against this. And I'll finish with this. First and second generation Americans are some of the best patriots right now because they left fascism. They left totalitarianism. They know what it's like. I have a friend who came here from Mexico legally. And one of the biggest revelations for him when he came here was, oh my God, all of the media in Washington, D.C. are fighting for one political party. I was like, yeah, that's a problem. He's like, that's what I just left. I just left the dictator being able to control the media. And I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening in America. We've got to say to our friends on the other side of the aisle, the fifth, sixth, seventh generation white liberals, that you're not helping minorities or the people that you look down on. You're not helping them by writing checks to organizations that support the public schools at the expense of private schools, for instance. All these rich, wealthy people that I know that send their kids to private schools and then they demand the support for the public school and they won't do scholarships or they won't allow tax dollars to go to scholarships to people who can't afford it. What they're really saying,
Right.
I get to go to private school, but you have to go to the shitty school down the street.
Right. No choice for you. I can make my choices because I've got the money to do it, but no choice from you. And you're right, Rick. The way that some people look down, and I don't think they mean to, or maybe they do, is like every human being could either be good, bad, wonderful, nefarious. It doesn't matter. It's like I say, when I go to the border and I speak to the people that are crossing, I don't assume anything. I don't assume that they came from, a bad situation where they had to escape for freedom. I don't assume that they're just here to commit crimes. I don't assume any of that. What I want is a government that vets them properly, that follows the law, and I treat them all as equals. Tell me your story. What's going on? What did you see along the way? What do you think is happening here? Why are you here? And I ask everybody the same question. I wanted to ask you this before I have to let you go. But and it's just going back really quick to the UN funding, is there any way at all that we can fix that funding that the UN is handling? Any way to fix the oversight situation there so that we have more of a say, since we do support the UN? I think we're one of the most, don't we supply the largest amount of money, to the majority of money? Is there any way that we can have a say in where that money is going?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got to have a U.S. mission to the UN, which is, they call it a mission, but it's like an embassy at the UN. We have to have an aggressive team there that is fighting for fairness. And I also think that I'm not sure that that's the job of the UN, to actually take our money and then give it to all these other organizations. We need to cut out the middleman as much as we can. And if we believe in an organization, then we should be able to fund it and support it. So I'm a big fan of the voluntary contributions at the UN, because countries can look at a program and say, I like that program, so I'm going to spend money on it and support it. And that way, those programs that are voluntarily funded, they get good management because the people supporting them demand it.
I think that's fabulous. I absolutely agree with you. I guess any advice? I know everybody out there keeps asking me, what can I do? Sara, what can we do 2024? How do we get somebody new in office that's actually going to make a difference? Can we trust the system? I say yes. I say we need to get out there and vote and speak up. What's your advice?
Well, it's a good question. And I would say, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't done something to save your country, then you need to get off the sidelines. Gone is the day that you get to listen and think, oh, I hope that Rick and Sara do something more, or that was good, and feel all cushy and inside about it. No, you got to do something. You got to do whatever you can. Some people listening to this can write a $25 check to somebody that they believe in, or an organization or a politician. Somebody can write a $2,500 check or a $25,000 check. But other people can pray, and they can make it a daily commitment to pray for this. This is a good and evil situation that we're faced with. I think other people who have voices need to stop worrying about being canceled and speak up and take to social media and do something and write or volunteer. But you can't just sit there and watch your country literally drift away. You got to get up and do what Ronald Reagan warned us that we have to do, which is fight. Fight for your country. There's a lot of things that you can do right now.
Thank you so much again, Ambassador Grenell, for being on the show. You're a great patriot and a good friend of America and a great friend of the Sara Carter Show. I appreciate everything you do to educate us and make us an active part of our government. Remember, folks, what Grenell said, what Ambassador Grenell said, it's absolutely true. You have the power within you. If you're willing to speak up, if you're willing to stand up, if you're willing to be a part of that change, you know what will surprise you? That there are more of us than there are of them. There are more of us than there are of them. This is an amazing country, one that you should be willing to fight for, one that is giving you the freedom and liberty based on what our forefathers established in our Constitution. Take advantage of it. Don't let that slip away, because if you do, it will be almost impossible to get back. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at scarterdc. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless our great nation. God bless the great state of Texas and the great state of California. Thank you so much for being a part of my show.